The story of a quiet student who almost everyone in her school overlooks. She is the kind of girl who walks through the hallway with her books close to her chest, eyes down, steps soft, hoping no one notices her too much. Not because she is afraid of people, but because she has learned that silence keeps life calm. She prefers sitting near the window in class, where she can see outside and pretend she is somewhere else whenever things feel overwhelming. Most of the time, she does not speak unless someone asks her something directly, and even then, her voice is so soft that people often ask her to repeat herself. Her classmates know her as the girl who stays to herself. They don't tease her, but they don't invite her into conversations either. They simply assume she likes being alone. The truth is, she does enjoy quiet moments, but that does not mean she enjoys being invisible. She is simply used to the feeling, and she has accepted it as part of who she is. Her teacher, however, has been noticing her for months. The teacher sees how she hesitates before raising her hand, how she quickly hides her notebook when someone walks past, how she becomes uncomfortable during group assignments. The teacher believes that every student has something special inside them, but some kids need a little push before that special thing comes out. So when the school decides to have a small confidence day, where students must come forward and show a small skill or talent, the teacher sees it as the perfect chance for the quiet girl to break out of her shell. The event is simple. Each student must do something in front of the class, read a poem, show an art project, play something, dance for a few seconds, or even just talk about something they enjoy. The whole point is to help them speak up and share a part of themselves. When the teacher announces this in class, some students get excited right away, some groan, saying they don't want to, and then there is the quiet girl, who lowers her eyes instantly, hoping her name doesn't end up on that list. But the next day, the teacher brings a written list of performers and reads each name aloud. When the quiet girl hears her name, she freezes. She stares at her desk, her fingers tightening around her pencil. Her heart starts beating faster, and she feels a strange mix of fear and embarrassment. She wants to ask the teacher to remove her name, but the words get stuck in her throat. After class, she goes to the teacher's desk and whispers that she has nothing to show, nothing others would care about. The teacher gives her a warm smile and tells her softly that everyone has something inside them worth sharing. The girl doesn't argue. She just nods, though she feels no comfort in those words, as she walks home. The thought keeps repeating in her mind. What should I do? What will I show? How can I stand in front of everyone? She thinks of reading something, but she doesn't know what. She thinks of picking a small drawing, but she never shows her art to strangers. By the time she gets home, her head hurts from thinking too much. She drops her school bag near her bed and sits on the floor, feeling tired. She thinks about skipping school on the day of the performance, but she knows that will only make things worse later. She sits in silence for a long time until her eyes fall on something under her bed, a long, dusty musical instrument case. She stares at it without moving. For a moment, she doesn't want to touch it. That case holds too many memories, both warm and painful. It has been years since she opened it. Every time she tried, her chest would tighten. Someone she loved very much used to sit beside her, teaching her how to hold the instrument, how to breathe, how to feel the music instead of just playing it. Those moments were some of the happiest she ever had. But when that person left her life, she could not bring herself to keep playing. Music became something that hurt, not something that healed. But now, as she sits alone in her room with the teacher's request echoing in her mind, she wonders if maybe it is time to lift the case again. Maybe she doesn't have to play for the class, or for anyone else. Maybe she just needs to see if she remembers anything at all. She slowly pulls the case out from under the bed, and wipes the top with her sleeve, removing years of dust. Her hands shake a little, not because she's afraid of failing, but because she is afraid of what memories might come back. She opens the case gently, as if something fragile is inside. And in a way, something fragile is indeed there, her old untouched instrument. She lifts it with both hands. It feels lighter than she remembers. Or maybe she feels heavier now. She sits on the edge of her bed and holds it carefully, like holding a memory. She closes her eyes and tries to recall how her fingers used to move across it. A blurry image appears in her mind, someone smiling at her, showing her where to place her hands. She opens her eyes, letting out a shaky breath. She tries playing one note. The sound is weak, uneven. She tries again. The second note is clearer. She adjusts her fingers, tries a simple melody she used to practice every day after school. At first, it sounds wrong, but slowly, very slowly, the melody begins to take shape. The room fills with soft, imperfect notes. It isn't beautiful yet, but it is real. It is honest. It is hers. She keeps practicing. stopping every few minutes to rest her hands. She feels something warm and sad inside her at the same time. She can almost hear the voice of the person who taught her, telling her to relax her shoulders, breathe deeply, and let the music speak for her. She smiles faintly without realizing it. She plays until the sun begins to set outside her window. She only stops when her fingers start to ache. She places the instrument back in the case gently, but this time she doesn't hide it under the bed. She keeps it near her desk, where she can see it is, maybe, for the first time in a long while. She wants to play again. As she eats dinner that night, her mind is still on the melody. She thinks about the performance day. The idea of standing in front of the whole class still terrifies her, but she knows one thing clearly. If she is going to do this, she will play that melody, not to impress the class, not to look talented, but to honor the memory of the person who once believed she could do it. Before sleeping, she takes out the instrument again and plays the first few notes softly. Even though they are simple, they fill her small room with warmth. She feels something inside her shift, something small but important, a tiny spark of courage. Maybe, the night before the performance, she practices quietly, almost whispering the music into the air. She imagines standing in front of her class, her hands trembling, her heart racing. She imagines the look on their faces, surprised, confused, curious. She wonders if they will listen. She wonders if they will care. But she reminds herself that what matters is not what they think, but whether she can do this for herself. When she finally lies down to sleep, she feels nervous, but also a little bit proud. She has taken the first step. She has opened a part of herself she once closed tightly. Tomorrow will be hard, but she has a melody inside her now, a melody that carries her past, her fears, and her courage. And deep inside, she hopes that maybe, just maybe, when she plays it tomorrow, someone will understand the meaning behind it. The quiet student waking up earlier than usual on the morning of the performance. The sunlight barely enters her room, yet she is already sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor. She didn't sleep much. Every time she tried to close her eyes, she imagined herself standing in front of the entire class, her hands shaking, her voice caught in her throat, her instrument slipping out of her grip. She imagined people whispering, staring, or worse, laughing. These thoughts made her heart beat faster through the whole night. But now the day is here, and she knows she can't run away from it. She gets dressed slowly, choosing a simple outfit that makes her feel comfortable. She doesn't want to stand out. She ties her hair the same way she does every day and picks up her instrument case, holding it close to her chest. Even though her hands feel cold, the case feels strangely warm, like it is giving her a small amount of comfort. As she walks to school, she keeps thinking about the melody she practiced. She hums it softly under her breath, hoping the tune stays fresh in her mind. Every few steps, she adjusts her fingers in the air, imagining she is touching the instrument. She knows she practiced as much as she could, but fear has a way of making even the best practice feel useless. When she reaches the school gate, students are already gathering. Everyone seems excited about the performances. Some kids carry drawings, others have musical instruments, and some are practicing lines from poems. The noise makes her want to step back, but she forces herself forward. She feels like she is walking into a crowd of people who all know something. She doesn't single quotes T. Inside the classroom. The teacher is arranging chairs in a way that creates a small stage area at the front. The room looks different. It feels larger and smaller at the same time. The girl chooses a seat near the corner, placing her instrument case carefully beside her. She keeps her hands in her lap, trying not to draw attention. Her classmates are talking loudly, comparing what they plan to perform. A few students glance at her but quickly go back to their conversations. They don't expect anything from her. They don't expect her to do anything surprising or memorable. And maybe that is why she feels so nervous, because she knows she is about to do something she has never done in front of them. The teacher finally asks everyone to sit down. With a warm smile, she reminds the class that today is not about being perfect. It is about trying. It is about showing something personal. She tells them that no one should make fun of anyone else because courage comes in many forms. The girl listens carefully, wishing she could believe those words fully. The first performer is a boy who reads a funny poem. The class laughs and cheers for him. The next student shows a drawing she made of her dog, and the class claps politely. Another student sings a short song, slightly off-key, but everyone still enjoys it. The room is filled with energy, laughter, and excitement. But with each performance, the quiet student feels her stomach tighten more and more. She counts every person who goes before her. She knows her turn is coming closer. A girl plays a short tune on a flute. A boy does a dance he practiced for a school competition. Someone recites a speech about their favorite book. The teacher smiles proudly at each one, encouraging them with soft claps and nods. Then the teacher looks at her list and calls the next name the name of the quiet student. The room becomes instantly quieter. Some students turn their heads toward her with curiosity. They don't expect much, but they still want to see what she do. The girl feels a heavy wave of fear wash over her. For a second, she thinks of staying seated, pretending she didn't hear her name. But her teacher looks at her with gentle eyes, as if telling her she can do this. She stands slowly, her legs feeling wobbly, and picks up her instrument case. It feels heavier than ever. She walks toward the front of the room, aware of every step she takes. Her hand shakes slightly, and she tries not to look at anyone. She wants to get through this as quietly as possible. When she reaches the front, she sets the case on the chair and opens it carefully. A soft gasp travels through the room when her classmates see the instrument. They had no idea she could play anything. Even the teacher looks a little surprised. The girl tries to ignore their reactions. She focuses on her breathing, trying to calm her racing heartbeat. She takes out the instrument, sits down, and adjusts it the way she practiced the night before. Her hands are trembling so much she has to rest them on her lap for a moment. She closes her eyes, trying to steady herself. She imagines the person who once taught her how to play sitting right beside her, whispering, "You can do it. Just breathe." That memory gives her enough courage to lift her hands again. She brings the instrument closer and places her fingers on the keys. The room is completely silent. The air feels thick, as if everyone is holding their breath. She takes one last deep inhale, opens her eyes only halfway, and plays the first note. The note is soft and shaky. She almost stops immediately, thinking she has already ruined everything. But then she remembers how she practiced, how she slowly found the melody again after years of staying silent. She takes another breath and plays the second note, then the third. Gradually, the melody begins to form. It is quiet and careful, like a small voice learning how to speak. She can feel her heartbeat matching the rhythm. The room remains silent, not awkward, but attentive. The students who were chatting earlier now watch her with wide eyes. The teacher leans forward slightly, listening more closely than before. The girl keeps playing, trying to forget where she is, trying to let the music guide her instead of her fear. Her fingers loosen with each passing second. The melody becomes smoother, fuller. She begins to feel the familiar warmth she used to feel when playing years ago. She remembers how the person who taught her always said music was like telling a story without using words. She plays the next part of the melody, the one that always makes her heart ache a little. She hears the past inside it. She feels the sadness, the longing, the hope. She doesn't realize she is leaning into the music the way she used to when she was younger. She doesn't see the small tears forming in the teacher's eyes. She doesn't notice the classmates who stop whispering and turn completely still. She is lost in the tune. At that moment, her fear fades away. For the first time in a long time, she is not the quiet girl who sits at the back of the room. She is not the student everyone forgets. She is just a girl who is sharing something honest, something that once gave her comfort and pain at the same time. By the time she reaches the final note, she is breathing heavily, as if she has run a long distance. The last note hangs in the air for a few seconds, soft but steady. When the sound disappears, she gently lowers the instrument and rests her hands on her lap. She looks at the floor, afraid to see the reactions. She thinks maybe she made mistakes. Maybe she looked awkward. Maybe the melody wasn't as good as she thought. But the room stays silent, not in boredom, not in confusion, but in a way that feels deep and meaningful. For the first time, she wonders if maybe she didn't fail. Maybe she actually reached them. She just doesn't know it yet. The school auditorium remained silent even after the last note of the girl's performance faded. It was a kind of silence no one could argue with, soft, powerful, and full of meaning. The teacher who had pushed the quiet student to perform stood frozen on the side of the stage. She had expected something simple, maybe a few notes, maybe even a shaky tune. Instead, she had witnessed a performance so emotional that even she felt her heartbeat slow down. The quiet student, with her hands still hovering above the piano keys, slowly lifted her head. For the first time, she looked directly at the audience. Her eyes weren't wide with fear anymore. They looked calm, almost relieved. She didn't smile, but there was a softness on her face that showed she had finally let something inside her. Breathe. Students sitting in the front row whispered to one another, but their voices were gentle, unsure. No one wanted to break the magic that still hung in the air. One of the boys who used to tease her for being too quiet looked like he wanted to clap but didn't know if he should. The girl who always sat behind her in class put her hand over her mouth, trying not to cry. The teacher stepped forward, still shocked. She didn't know what to say at first. When she finally found her voice, it came out in a whisper. That was unbelievable. The quiet girl looked down again, almost shy, like she wasn't sure she deserved the reaction she was getting. But everyone in the room felt she did. Something about the way she played had touched each of them in a different way. The sound still echoed in their minds, the soft beginning, the emotional middle, and the powerful end that felt like someone opening a door to their heart. The teacher turned to the audience. Everyone, please give her a round of applause. The sound that followed was loud and full of real respect. It wasn't forced. It wasn't polite clapping. It was the kind that came from people who genuinely felt something. Some students even stood up without realizing it, moved by what they had witnessed. The quiet girl didn't know how to react. She looked overwhelmed, but not scared. She blinked a few times, like she couldn't believe people were cheering for her. Her hands, still slightly shaking, rested on her lap. She had never been the center of attention before, not like this. Not for something she loved. Not for something she had kept hidden for so long. When the applause finally slowed, the teacher gently guided her off the stage. You did something amazing, she whispered. You should be proud. The girl didn't answer. She simply nodded. It was all she could manage. As they stepped backstage, the teacher couldn't stop thinking about what she had heard. She thought back to all the times she had told the girl to participate more, speak more, raise her hand in class. She had always assumed the girl was just shy or uninterested. She never imagined that someone so quiet could hold something so bright inside. Back in the audience, students were still talking. One girl said, I didn't know she could do that. Another replied, me neither. I feel like we never really noticed her. Even the school's vice principal, who rarely showed emotion, had to wipe the corner of his eye. He had only agreed to attend the performance because he had spare time, but now he was grateful he hadn't missed it. Meanwhile, backstage, the teacher sat beside the quiet girl. There was a long moment where they both said nothing. The teacher could tell the girl had a lot on her mind, but she didn't want to push her. She wanted the girl to speak when she was ready. Finally, the girl whispered, I didn't think anyone would care. The teacher shook her head gently. People care more than you think. They just didn't know who you really were. The girl took a small breath. I don't like speaking in front of people, but playing, it feels different. It feels like I can talk without talking. The teacher smiled softly. And you spoke louder than anyone else today. While they talked, students started asking if they could speak to the girl. They lined up at the backstage door, not wanting to overwhelm her, but wanting to tell her how they felt. When the teacher asked the girl if she wanted to see them, she hesitated, then nodded. The first student walked in slowly. A boy who had never talked to her before said, You're playing? It was beautiful. I'm sorry I didn't notice you before. She looked down but managed a small thank you. Another girl stepped forward. It made me cry, she admitted. I don't even know why. It just felt real. The quiet girl didn't know how to respond, but she didn't need to. Her presence alone spoke for her. More students came in, each with their own reaction. Some were emotional, others were excited. Some simply wanted to say they admired her. She didn't expect any of it. She had gone from being invisible to someone everyone wanted to understand. It felt strange, but in a warm way. Like something changing inside her was finally settling into place. Later that evening, when the auditorium had emptied and most students had gone home, the girl stayed behind for a moment. She sat at the piano again, gently touching the keys. There was no audience now, no pressure, no fear, just her and the sound she loved. She played a soft melody, something new, something simple, something honest. It wasn't meant for anyone else. It was just her way of telling the piano thank you for helping her say everything she never could with words. The teacher watched from the doorway, not wanting to interrupt. She realized the girl didn't need to be forced to perform ever again. All she needed was the right moment and a bit of courage that already lived deep inside her. The teacher stepped forward only when the girl finished. I think today changed something, she said. Not just for you, but for everyone who listened. The girl gave a small smile, the first real smile the teacher had seen from her. I didn't mean to make anyone emotional, she said softly. You didn't try to, the teacher replied. That's what made it powerful. As they walked out of the auditorium together, the building felt different. The girl felt different too. She wasn't suddenly outgoing or talkative. She wasn't suddenly full of confidence. But she felt seen. And sometimes, that's all someone needs to start growing. She walked down the hallway with her backpack slung over her shoulder. The echo of her own music still in her mind. Students who passed her didn't ignore her anymore. They smiled, nodded, or whispered things like great job today. It felt strange, but it didn't scare her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged. Not because she finally spoke loudly, but because she found a way to let others hear her heart. And little did she know, this was only the beginning of everything that was going to change next. The morning after the performance, the quiet student woke up earlier than usual. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, still replaying everything that had happened the day before. The applause, the tears she had seen on her classmates' faces, the teacher's gentle words backstage. It all felt like a dream, one of those dreams you don't want to wake up from because it makes you feel stronger than you really are. She sat up slowly, holding her blanket close. The house was quiet, except for the sound of someone making tea in the kitchen. Her mother was already awake. Her mother called out softly, asking if she was getting ready for school. The girl answered with a quiet yes. Her mother poked her head inside the room, smiling like she had been waiting all morning. "You were amazing yesterday," she said. "Everyone was talking about you." The girl lowered her eyes, feeling shy again. "I just played," she murmured. "You didn't just play," her mother corrected. "You touched people's hearts, including mine." The girl didn't know how to respond. She simply hugged her mother for a moment before getting ready for school. When she arrived at the school gate, she noticed something unusual. Students looked at her not with judgment or confusion but with warmth. People she had never spoken to waved gently. A group of younger students whispered, "That's the girl who played yesterday," but they said it with excitement, not mockery. She walked toward her classroom, holding her books close to her chest. The hallway felt different. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like the girl who kept her head down and said nothing. She felt like someone people wanted to understand. When she entered the classroom, her teacher welcomed her with a smile. "Good morning," she said in a warm voice. The girl nodded and quietly walked to her seat. A few classmates turned around to greet her. One girl passed her a small note that said, "You inspired me." Another whispered, "I wish I could play like that." She felt her cheeks warming, but she also felt happy and emotion she had kept locked up for so long that it felt new again. During the first lesson, the teacher suddenly stopped teaching and cleared her throat. "Before we continue," she said, "I want to say something." The entire class turned quiet instantly. "Yesterday," the teacher continued, "we witnessed something rare. We saw someone open her heart through music, and I want all of you to remember that every person around you carries something special. Sometimes we don't notice it because we don't stop to look." The quiet student stared at her desk, her hands trembling slightly. The teacher smiled in her direction. "Thank you again," she said gently. "You showed us the power of courage." The room filled with soft applause, not loud, not overwhelming, just warm, enough to make her feel appreciated without scaring her. Later, during lunch, the girl sat under a tree outside, enjoying the quiet air. She liked peaceful places where she could think clearly. Soon she noticed shadows falling beside her. A few students stood there, hesitant but friendly. One of the boys asked, "Can we sit with you?" She blinked in surprise. No one had ever asked her that before. She nodded slowly, and they sat down on the grass. They weren't loud or overwhelming. They spoke gently, asking small questions like, "How long have you been playing the piano?" Or "Did someone teach you?" She answered in her soft voice, explaining how she had learned mostly by listening and practicing alone at home. She told them her mother used to play old songs in the house and that she loved the way music made her feel things she couldn't put into words. The students listened closely. They didn't interrupt or tease her. Instead, they asked if she could teach them one day. For the first time, she didn't feel nervous at the idea. She simply said, "Maybe." One day later, the school principal approached her in the hallway. His serious expression made her think she was in trouble, but instead he said, "I have a request." She looked at him nervously. "We have a school event next month," he explained. "Would you consider performing again? It would mean a lot to the school." She didn't answer right away. Part of her still feared standing in front of people, but another part of her, the part that found strength while playing, felt hopeful. She finally nodded slowly. "I think I can," she said. The principal smiled warmly. "Thank you. I'm proud of you." After school, she visited the auditorium again. It was empty this time, sunlight shining through the large windows and reflecting off the stage floor. She sat at the piano, touching the keys gently. She remembered how shaky her hands used to be whenever someone watched her. Now, she felt more stable, like she had learned how to breathe again. She played a few notes, not a full song, just a melody her mother used to hum while cooking. The sound filled the room softly, dancing in the air, warm and comforting. She smiled to herself. The teacher walked in a moment later, quietly so she wouldn't disturb her. "I thought I'd find you here," she said with a small laugh. The girl looked up, surprised but happy. The teacher sat beside her. "Are you ready for more people to hear your music?" she asked. The girl hesitated, then nodded. I think I'm ready now. The teacher watched her with a proud expression. You know, she said gently, sometimes the quietest people have the loudest hearts. They just need the right moment to show it. The girl looked at the piano again. I just want people to feel something when they hear me play. And they do, the teacher said softly. You reminded everyone yesterday that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. The girl didn't say anything, but her eyes softened. She understood exactly what the teacher meant. A few weeks later, the day of the school event arrived. This time, the girl didn't feel afraid. She felt prepared. She walked onto the stage with calm steps, wearing simple clothes and carrying no worries. The audience waited silently, remembering how she had moved them before. She sat at the piano and gently placed her hands on the keys. The hall fell completely silent. Even before she played, people already felt something building in their hearts. When she began, her music carried a new energy, calm but confident, soft but brave. It wasn't just a performance. It was her story, told through sound. Every note felt like a step forward, every chord like a new beginning. The audience listened with full attention. Some smiled, some closed their eyes, some felt tears building as she played the final note. She let it fade naturally, like a deep breath after a long, emotional journey. When she lifted her hands from the keys, the room stayed quiet for a few seconds, quiet in the best possible way. Then the applause came, stronger than before, filling the hall with warmth. But this time, the girl didn't look away. She looked up, meeting the eyes of the people who were clapping for her. She didn't feel scared. She felt grateful. She felt proud. And in that moment, she realized something she had never understood before. Being quiet was not her weakness. It was her strength. It made her listen. It made her feel deeply. It made her create music that spoke louder than words ever could. The teacher stood near the curtain, wiping her eyes. Her mother watched from the crowd, smiling with both pride and love. The girl stood up and did something she never thought she would do. She bowed, just a little, but enough to show she accepted their love. And when she walked off the stage, she felt lighter than she ever had in her whole life. She knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning of a future where her voice through music would continue to reach hearts she had never met before.